What's old may be new again if rumours are to be believed, because Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic might be getting a remake of sorts. Jordan Mason at Cinelinx.com is the one that's breaking these rumours around the net, and this is the same guy who also broke the news about Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show starring Ewan McGregor, so, you know, there's some credit behind his name. If you're not familiar with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, also known as KOTOR, it's set 4,000 years before the Star Wars prequels, in a time period in which the Jedi and the Sith were in conflict with one another. I mean, when are they never in conflict? So the article here says that it's not so much a remake, but more of a reimagining of sorts. The goal of this project apparently is to integrate elements from the first two games, so Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords, into one game, and to bring them into the current modern Star Wars canon. And that's kind of all we know about this at the minute. So the big question is it happening? Possibly. Just last year, the president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, confirmed that there were plans for something related to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic in development. I mean, if she says it, it has to be true, doesn't it?
Knights of the Old Republic, a lot of fans want to see that. Is there any development of that?
We talk about that all the time. Yes, we are developing something to look at. Right now, I have no idea where things might fall, but we have to be careful that there is a cadence to Star Wars that doesn't start to feel like too much. We don't have a crystal ball. We tried a little bit with Solo to see if we could do 2 movies a year and whether or not there was really an opportunity for that. And we felt that's not going to work, so we backed off of that a little bit. But it doesn't mean we don't think about lots of different stories, because that's the exciting thing about this universe.
So at this point we assume she was talking about film or TV, because that's her main area of expertise. The rumours circulating were that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the makers of Game of Thrones, were the ones attached to do a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy of films. Of course, those rumours have since been cancelled out because 1, they're not doing Star Wars films anymore because they got fired, and 2, because it turns out their idea for a Star Wars trilogy was to focus on the origins of the Jedi. I'm kind of glad they're not doing it anymore, to be honest. Then you've got Rian Johnson's long in development trilogy of Star Wars films. Are they still happening? Right now, the status of his Star Wars films is as mysterious as the killer in his recent film Knives Out. But it's looking doubtful. And if he is doing this new trilogy, it is possible that he's going to be exploring something in the Knights of the Old Republic time frame. But knowing Rian Johnson, he's more likely to do something fresh, new and radical than to go into a time frame and period of the Star Wars canon that's already been explored to some extent, whether we like it or not. Also, as of recording, it's the 1st of February 2020. It was announced last year that by the end of January we would know what the next Star Wars movie or the next Star Wars director is. And well, it's 1st of February now. We haven't found that out. So yeah, time's ticking on that one. Hell, it's run out. So then, if this is happening, if we are getting a Knights of the Old Republic remake, the big question is who's making it? Of course, BioWare made the original. They've since went on to do the Mass Effect trilogy, and of course Mass Effect Andromeda. They've also done Dragon Age, and recently Anthem. But let's not talk about that one. Their recent games, Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, have been divisive to say the least. Would this in some way hamper their ability to do a Star Wars game again? I don't know, because Lucasfilm might look at this and say, oh, a lot of controversy surrounding this one and the actual creative side of things. Maybe we don't want you guys doing it just now. On the other hand, this could be the big return they really kind of desperately need. Currently though, we do know that BioWare is working on at least 2 games. We know that they're in development of Dragon Age 4, and they're also in early development of the next Mass Effect. So that's 2 pretty big RPGs in development there. Will they actually have time to do a Knights of the Old Republic remake if they are actually going to be doing it? I'm not an expert in this area, but I doubt it. Another possibility is DICE. DICE, of course, recently developed the Battlefront games, Battlefront 1 and 2. They also done Mirror's Edge and Battlefield. So doing an RPG is kind of out of their comfort zone, so to say. It's not something they've really delved in before, but they have done some interesting stories in their games before. And most recently, Battlefront 2, very controversial, particularly in regards to microtransactions and loot boxes and all of that sort of thing, and the progression system. That could really impact whether or not they are allowed to make another Star Wars game. Hell, there were even reports that Lucasfilm and Disney got involved with all the controversy and basically said, hey, you need to get your act together, this isn't what we want. That being said, I do think a third Battlefront game is in development. I mean, it has to be. Despite the controversy, the game did do well, it got good reviews, and it sold okay. They're also probably working on the next Battlefield game, and the rumours are that it's meant to be coming out around 2021. Which means what's coming out in 2020? There wasn't anything last year either. Maybe they want to avoid the new console generation, so maybe they're going to skip this year too. This next possibility is a bit more of a long shot. Obsidian. So if you know a few things about games and companies surrounding games, you'll also know that EA owns the rights to Star Wars video games. They had signed a 10-year license with Disney and Lucasfilm to make Star Wars games. There's approximately 3 years left on that contract right now. And you'll also know that Obsidian, not owned by EA. So how can they possibly be making a Star Wars game? Because they're now owned by Microsoft. Well, hear me out. Like I said, this is a long shot. In recent years, we know that Disney and Marvel reached out to big name companies like Square Enix and Sony to develop Marvel-based video games. We ended up getting Spider-Man on the PS4, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Nintendo Switch, and we're getting Avengers later this year. So this was a really big deal. One of the biggest companies on the planet, with undoubtedly some of the biggest brands ever made, reached out to the big video game companies and said, hey, do you want to make a game? It's hard to believe then that they would possibly not include Microsoft, one of the big video game companies, in these discussions. I mean, who wouldn't jump at the opportunity to make one of these games? So, this either means that for some bizarre reason, Microsoft and Disney and Marvel didn't come to a deal and are not making any games together, or they are secretly making a Marvel video game for Xbox consoles, or maybe they had a little bit of a different deal and they didn't want Marvel, they wanted Star Wars. Again, the big EA exclusivity thing does throw a wrench in the works here, and chances are that's probably going to be the big thing that makes this whole argument that I'm going to go into irrelevant. But in recent years, Xbox Game Studios has been expanding. They've bought a bunch of other companies like Obsidian. They've started up a bunch of new companies as well to make video games exclusive to Microsoft platforms. And for some of these developers, we don't know the specifics of what they're making. Yes, we know Ninja Theory's got Hellblade and that new melee combat game in development. We know that Obsidian does have another game in development, but there are still a lot of blank spots, like what's such and such working on. We know they've got the Halo game in the making, then the Coalition's probably working on Gears 6 as well. But there are still companies out there we don't know what they're doing. But here's just a little reminder and a bit of history. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic was originally an Xbox exclusive. Yes, it ended up coming to tablets and smartphones and PC, but originally it was an Xbox game. So there's history there. Xbox and Microsoft have a history with Star Wars and this particular franchise. Also, Obsidian made the sequel to Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. It wasn't quite as good as the first game, but it was still a damn good game. They did end up rushing it out though, and there are some unfinished elements of it. So again, there's history there as well. It would make perfect sense then for Obsidian to be considered the ones to remake this game under Microsoft's banner. This could just be wild speculation on my part. So let's avoid all that stuff now and actually talk about the game itself and the remake of this game. How could they possibly remake this game, including elements from the first two games, and make it fit into the new Star Wars canon? Well, it's actually surprisingly simple, at least from a writing standpoint. Taking an overlarge view of things, It could be as simple as renaming a few things, so changing the names of locations and planets and vehicles and items, altering certain designs to fit in with the new canon and so on. Stuff like that is the main thing they're probably going to end up having to alter to fit it into the new canon. But they are also going to have to go into backstories and finer details here and there, tweak things just a bit, so things like the Mandalorians have been explored in now 3 TV shows. They're going to have to change some of the backstory and history of those individuals and the planet to fit into the canon. But planets like Malachor and Maribor and Mandalore and Korriban have all been added into the canon now, but they were originally introduced in this video game. So the depictions in the video game were different to what they are now, so they'd have to change some of that stuff too. In fact, for example, Korriban, the original home of the Sith, that's no longer the case. In fact, in Star Wars The Clone Wars, they renamed it to Moraban for whatever reason. But I think it's also still known as Korriban at the same time. It's unusual. But also we've got Exegol, and there's a bunch of Sith history surrounding that, which they'd have to somehow incorporate into the game now. Then you've also got characters like Revan. Revan is officially part of Star Wars canon. He was mentioned at some point in recent canon. I think it might be in Rebels or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Revan, the main character, or main villain and main individual in the original KOTOR game, is canonical. It's just everything surrounding him that's now different. So they're going to have to change that somehow. Overall, I do think they can very easily make the changes to fit it into the canon while keeping the core essence of what KOTOR was. Where the biggest problem is probably going to arise is in the merging of 2 games into one. Because while KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords did have certain structural similarities, and with the story had certain similar beats here and there, it was a different story overall. So merging them into one might be tricky, because the sequel does have new characters, new locations, and so on and so forth. It expands on the lore of the original game as well, going further into like the Mandalorians and the Sith with Malachor and stuff like that. So that could be complicated. But then you've also got the big twist, the big reveal, the big revelation in the original game. Now, I'm not going to spoil here, but there's simply no way you can do that again in this game and have the same impact. Probably everyone who's going to play this game knows the twist, they knows what's going on. And ultimately this could be the big moment of the story and of the game that makes or breaks it. So you've either got 2 choices: change it, which would upset certain fans, or keep it the same, which would lessen the impact and make it much less important or dramatic. It's a lose-lose situation for them, really. So to bring this all to a close, do I think this is actually happening? Yes. I don't know who's making it, I can only speculate on that like I have, but I do think it's in development somewhere. I also think that now that the main saga of films is over, Lucasfilm's probably more willing to explore different avenues of Star Wars, such as older time frames, maybe even going to the future and doing different side stories all over the place. Be a bit more radical, a bit more bold. They don't have to adhere to the main saga quite as much anymore, which I think increases the likelihood of doing something like this game. But that's all in the future. Will it happen? Will it not? I don't know. Leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think of this idea of a KOTOR remake. Is it happening? I don't know. If you've liked this video, you can subscribe to my channel to get more content like this. I'd really appreciate that. Also, go over to Twitter and Instagram, follow me at @the_Grant Burton if you want. Until next time though, thanks for watching.